Sports Radio 960 WSBT in South Bend. And of course, we have Tyler Horka back with us. I don't think he has any idea what day of the week it is or what time it is, since he is truly fresh off the bird from Europe, and he's back on the mainland after soaking in Notre Dame's impressive 42-3 victory over Navy. Well, Tyler, let me start with this. Tell me your path from Dublin to South Bend.
Yeah, so Dublin to South Bend, I was taking myself all the way back to last Friday because that's when it really all started. But got to Dublin on Friday afternoon. Obviously spent some time there, did the game, spent all of Sunday in Dublin, and I think I'll get into some of that later on. I got some props to show everybody and whatnot. So it was always the plan to come back on Monday because that saved On3 a little bit of money, and it gave me a day, obviously, to kind of do some things that I wasn't able to do Friday and Saturday before the game. I've actually got a story. I'll put it up online here for our YouTube audience. Obviously, if you're listening at home on podcast, that doesn't do a whole lot for you, but just know that Sunday was tremendous and terrific. Went to the Brazen Head, which is the oldest pub in Ireland, is what it is monikered as outside the building. Apparently, I come to know that a lot of pubs in Ireland say the same thing, but the Brazen Head, 1198, so 1198. That's a long time ago. We're coming up on what, 1,000 years. Got a really cool hat for again everyone listening at home. I'm showing the YouTube audience the hat that I got from the Brazen Head. Awesome pub. What made it more awesome was I saw Joe Montana rolling dice at the Brazen Head on that Sunday when I was there. He was with his son, some other friends, and he's in the corner of the bar just playing a game, drinking a Guinness. And then the amount of Notre Dame fans that were there. Shout out to Danny and his father, Jim. Only know them on a first name basis. Don't know their last names. Doesn't matter because they came up to me. They recognized me. They said, "Hey, you're Tyler Horka. I just watched your stand-up an hour before I came here. And I recognize you." So we chatted about Notre Dame for like half an hour. I ended up meeting Brian and Kelly. Their last name is O'Leary, so that is very Notre Dame-esque, Irish-esque right there. Chatted with them for 3 or 4 hours, drank at the Brazen Head with them, got their story. Turns out Brian's late father was a Blue and Gold Illustrated subscriber for the longest time. That's how Brian got into Notre Dame fandom. Again, you can read all of this at blueandgold.com. I'll end up throwing on the article here in a minute. But so that was my Sunday. Woke up Monday morning and flew to Madrid to have a 24-hour connection. And as great as Ireland is and the game and everything like that, Madrid is awesome. I think I have a new favorite city, and that's Madrid. Dublin is like top 3 or 5 for me in the world. Madrid instantly became number 1. I was there for 24 hours, walked 10 miles. Wow. 10 miles around Madrid, saw as much as I could. And then I got up this morning. 11:35 was my flight Madrid time. What is that, like 4 or 5 a.m. here in the Central Time Zone or the Eastern Time Zone? Flew into O'Hare, landed at O'Hare 2 o'clock on the dot, which is 3 o'clock Eastern, obviously. Drove here. Now here I am talking Notre Dame football with you guys. So that's just a little bit of my weekend. Again, if you want to read more about it, go to blueandgold.com, go to my profile. 3 or 4 articles down. It's called Dublin Diary Day 3, how 5 Notre Dame fans at the Brazen Head completed a life-changing trip. Because that's what it was. It was a life-changing trip for me. We'll never forget it. We'll never forget the football game, too. We're going to talk about that here in a minute because that was the reason for me going out there. It's just really cool that I got to experience all those other things as a result of it as well.
Did I hear correctly? The couple's name was Brian and Kelly?
Yeah, you did, but I don't think Kelly spells her name Kelli, right? It's just the standard spelling for Brian, that Brian's wife. But yeah, good catch. I didn't even think about that.
All right. How about we talk some football? Are you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so let's go to some of the questions that Tyler received at Hey Horka at Blue and Gold Illustrated, blueandgold.com. Let me start things off with HTX Irish Wave. Does the performance Saturday change your expectations for the 2023 Notre Dame season?
Uh, One word answer is yes. And the nuanced, convoluted answer is it was just Navy. It was a season opener, obviously. So there's still 11 games left to be played. I don't know how much stock you can really put in to just one game. But if you're Notre Dame and you come out of that game, I mean, what did you miss outside of literally just missing a field goal? Otherwise, it would have been 45-3. But offensively, you have the ball, what is it, 7 or 8 times, and you score 7 times or 6 times, 6 touchdowns in the game. The only times that you don't score, I think, is the very last possession when Steve Angeli comes into the game. And then the missed field goal attempt that I just mentioned as well. So obviously, when you're watching Notre Dame, you want to see what the offense is doing because you have Sam Hartman now. And first drive, touchdown. Second drive, touchdown. I mean, all the way up until halftime, this thing's 28-0. And you're sitting there thinking, this is exactly why Notre Dame went out and got this guy. So I think it does change the expectations because remember when we were having the conversations, Darren, in March and April, and Sam Hartman didn't look like he was fitting in. And I knew that was going to change. I knew Sam Hartman was going to get the feeling like Sam Hartman. But holy cow, it showed up in game 1, and he was almost flawless. I mean, what was he, 19 of 23 for 250 and 4 touchdowns? Doesn't get a whole lot better than that. And then the defense pitching a shutout through 56 and a half minutes, it doesn't get a whole lot better than that, even if it is Navy. I wrote about that today at blueandgold.com, what we learned about the Navy or the Notre Dame defense after the Navy game. And when I went back and rewatched this game, it was just situation after situation, Notre Dame looking fantastic. And I'll pop this up on the screen here. This is the article that I wrote at blueandgold.com. It doesn't want to scroll for me there. But anyway, the gist is I watched the game and I just saw, okay, Navy's ripping off 14 yards, 11 yards on those first few plays. And then all of a sudden, Jordan Botelho gets a huge tackle, stuffed at the line of scrimmage. That resets a possession. Javonte Jean-Baptiste late in the first half, Navy's driving, and he gets a tackle for loss. Navy ends up trying to kick a field goal late in the first half just to get some points on the board, missed the field goal. So offense, defense, I saw everything that I needed to see, even though it was just Navy, for me to change my expectations for this season, or at least heighten them a little bit. I think the ceiling for this team might be a little bit higher. What do you think, Darren?
I want to mention one thing really quick about Hartman, a play that symbolized how he can be different than some of our more recent quarterbacks. When he threw the touchdown pass to Jaden Greathouse, the second one, he'd moved out of the pocket, he rolled to his left, and it looked like he was going to run. But he kept his head up, Tyler, and he found Greathouse in the end zone. And I'm betting a couple of our more recent quarterbacks wouldn't have kept their head up and looking into the end zone like he did. They would have just ran, which is fine, and pick up yardage. But he never took his eyes off his receivers downfield and made a great throw off the platform and got the Irish a very easy touchdown to Jaden Greathouse. That play kind of symbolized just one of the ways he's a little different than some of the more recent quarterbacks that we've had. You know, I've said on my show back in South Bend, since we got Sam Hartman, I felt like he was going to be the best Notre Dame quarterback since Brady Quinn. Now it's one game. I'm not going to jump to conclusions, but it sure feels that way just based on, Tyler, the way he knew the offense, made the correct checks at the line of scrimmage, and once he got the football, made great decisions down the field. Those things are going to carry over. Those aren't just Navy-type plays. Those are plays that are going to happen throughout the season against the best teams in the country. So, as we've talked about when you've been on my show, great quarterbacks can cover up deficiencies on a football team. And I'm not quite sure yet where all the deficiencies are on this football team, but if they have a couple, this quarterback has the ability to cover those up.
Yeah, and I see someone in the chat mentioning the safeties. Maybe that's one of the deficiencies that we're talking about. We really didn't get to see because Notre Dame was playing Navy, and I think Navy attempted uh, all of 7 passes. So I'm not sure about the safeties. We'll find out by the end of September for sure when Notre Dame plays Ohio State, who, by the way, today on Tuesday, Ryan Day mentioned that it will be Kyle McCord who is starting this week against Indiana for Ohio State's season opener. I expect Kyle McCord to be the starter come September 23rd against Notre Dame as well. But we'll see. Ryan Day says he wants to play both of those guys, Devin Brown being the other one. Look, they're both 5 stars. So can't really go wrong. And maybe it is a thing where Ryan Day really feels like they can both play. But I think it'll be all Kyle McCord come September 23rd. And if those safeties are an issue, like here we have another comment here. James Lawrence Zensi says safeties is what I'll be watching the most in week 2. We'll get to a little Tennessee State talk. I think we're going to finish this podcast with what we're looking for from Notre Dame against Tennessee State. But yeah, I mean, you're not wrong to say the secondary, because we didn't see a whole lot of that in week 0 against Navy, obviously. But just to wrap up this conversation on what we did see from Notre Dame, again, Sam Hartman looking nearly flawless. The ability to play 5 running backs, that's another conversation we'll get into in this podcast. And then defensively, I thought, the front 7 is what was going to be tested in that game, and the front 7 played pretty well. You saw a play from Riley Mills. Joshua Burnham made a play. I mentioned Javonte Jean-Baptiste. Pretty much everyone. I mean, Jack Kaiser, Maris Leofau had 2 of their best games in Notre Dame uniforms. So you talked a lot about Hartman just now, Darren, but what else? I mean, I mentioned all of those other things. You had to have been impressed in some other ways too.
I think one thing that really impressed me more than anything else was the depth we saw on defense. And I know the comments made about the safeties a moment ago are extremely fair, but you take a look at the snaps in the game, Tyler. I believe there were 9 defensive linemen that had at least 14 snaps in the ball game. You had the 4 linebackers had at least 27 snaps, Snead being one of those. You had all the safeties and the corners playing. So my point is this. Marcus Freeman emphasized to his coaching staff, we need to build up the 2s and the 3s because of their limited game experience. And you had a Navy offense that we all know that can be very difficult to deal with. The way Al Golden prepared this team, the game plan, and even the 2s and the 3s understanding their assignment so well, you take a look at late in the ball game, they were still doing a really good job stopping that Navy triple option attack, or at times spread option, whatever you want to call it. I'm just really impressed. No matter how deep you went down the depth chart, there was quality play. People knew their assignments, and that's a credit to Al and the coaching staff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did an article here, and I'll pop this up. I do it for both sides of the ball, where I look at Pro Football Focus grades the very next morning after the game. I mean, I think I was ahead, obviously 5 hours ahead, I think Ireland is. But I was up at like 9 or 10 a.m. on Sunday morning after staying awake until 5:30 a.m. local to put together our blueandgold.com magazine, which if I had time to stop at the office, I would have gone by there. And so I can display one here on the video for our video YouTube live watchers right now. Don't have one. I'll get one at the office tomorrow. But yeah, up till 5:30, then I'm up at 9 or 10, just waiting for Pro Football Focus grades, and finally, I think at the 11 o'clock hour, which would have been 6 o'clock Eastern, they dropped them. And I was pretty impressed, especially on offense. I'll share the defense here. But basically, if you read this here, grades in the 70s, and this isn't like your high school or your middle school type grading system. Grades in the 70s are, what does it say here? Very good to good. So if you're getting 70s, you're doing things right. And if you read here, let's make that a little bigger. Javonte Jean-Baptiste, 75.7 overall. Jack Kaiser, 73.1. Maris Leofau, 72.2. These are the guys that I was mentioning earlier, Darren, where I was like, yeah, I saw them make plays. Jordan Botelho, I mentioned that stuff on that first drive. If Jordan Botelho doesn't stuff Dabo Fofana on that fourth carry of the game, he might rip off a 10-yarder right there. And then you're thinking Navy's going to tie this thing up, but it didn't happen. It's those plays that just kind of alter the momentum of drives. Notre Dame had plenty of them, and it kind of shows up here in these Pro Football Focus grades that I'm referencing here. So I thought those are interesting. They're always interesting. Go to blueandgold.com because it is a premium article. I just gave a little bit of it away. Obviously, Pro Football Focus is also something that you have to pay for. But blueandgold.com, I'll put those up, and then I'll kind of write some takeaways at the bottom of that. We'll do that one more time here. These are like my takeaways. I'm like, okay, this is what I saw from that chart. So very interesting stuff, kind of like the stuff we were talking about, Darren. But offense, defense, very good. I think it alters the expectations for this team. Let's move on to the next topic, though.
Okay, and remind folks to make sure you give the thumbs up on this video and subscribe to the Blue and Gold YouTube channel. Next up, Tyler, let's talk about the Irish offensive line. TKY21 asks, Tyler, you were concerned about the Notre Dame offensive line exiting fall camp. How do you feel now?
Yeah, this was the impetus. This was really our whole show last week, right? We started with it. I think we circled back to it in the middle, maybe even mentioned it at the end. I was very worried. But then, Darren, on your Sports Beat pregame radio show, you asked kind of the same question. What do you kind of expect from this offensive line? And the answer that I gave you was, you know what? It's game day. These guys are about to play in 3 or 4 hours. And I actually feel kind of good about it now, because when you think back to how it played out in fall camp was a whirlwind. It went by very quickly. But you think back on it and you say, that was 3.5 weeks of Rocco Spindler and Pat Coogan playing starting reps at guard. And then they're next to Joe Alton, Blake Fisher, and Zeke Correll day after day, day after day. And at that point I said, maybe Joe Rudolph is onto something here. I think these might be the guys. So on Monday, obviously I was feeling a little iffy. By Saturday, I was like, let's give these guys a shot, see what they have. They played fantastic. If you go and watch some of the film, again, like I said, I rewatched the game. Push after push after push. Notre Dame was getting it. Audric Estime wasn't being contacted until he was 5 yards downfield. Darin Pritchett is scoring a 19-yard touchdown on his first ever collegiate carry. I mean, that all goes back to the offensive line. As good as Darin Pritchett is, and I want to shout out someone who said in the chat, it said something about Darin Pritchett being twitchy. It's a good thing that I can't find it in the chat. That means we're having a lot of people hone in there. But somebody said Darin Pritchett is twitchy. Yeah, he is. But the offensive line is powerful, and I wrote about that at blueandgold.com. When you have a stable of 5 backs plus a really good offensive line, that's going to take you places. So I feel a little bit better about it now. Let me say this. It was still Navy. And look, Navy was really good against the run last year. So let's say that. I think they were a top 5, top 3 team in college football stopping the run. So that was really impressive for Notre Dame to run for 5.9 yards per carry. But I'm not sure Navy's going to be a top 5 team in stopping the run this season. It just seems like maybe that was a flash in the pan type of deal. And I mentioned Pat Coogan. There was a moment there in that game where I saw it live, and then I looked at my monitor of Aviva Stadium. I'll share a video on Twitter here in a minute. Awesome press box setup where we're in the crowd, but we still have like our own TV monitor, laptop space. We had our own little cubicle. It's like we were in the first class of press boxes. I looked at my monitor, and there was a play where Pat Coogan literally went out to block, and he had nobody to touch. He just stood there and was like, okay, I don't need to do anything, and we're still going to rattle off however many yards on that play. So that's the caveat. It is just Navy. We have to take it with a grain of salt. But, Darren, I think you've got to feel a little bit better about the offensive line too, because, look, you only get 12 of these showcases a season, and they just passed number 1 in a really big way.
Hey, let's face it. Last year, they had 1.9 yards per carry against Navy. Now, having a quarterback that scares the daylights out of the defense, that makes a major difference. Unfortunately, last year, Navy, I think it's fair to say, didn't respect the Irish quarterback, and they were going to take away that running game. They did a great job, and statistically, they were great last year. But yeah, you're right. Totally different ball game. Having that threat of the deep ball, having a great quarterback made a ton of difference. And of course, no surprise, Joel got the #1 grade of offensive line play in week 0 in Pro Football Focus. Fisher was okay. So I'm really intrigued. I had him at 10-2 at the start of the year. I'm not going to jump up yet. If they go down and they play like this against North Carolina State, I think it's time to start reevaluating my preseason conversation.
Yeah, you said you had them at 10-2, and you mentioned Joe Alt being the highest graded offensive lineman. So I'll show you some Pro Football Focus grades for the offense there. You're looking at that overall offense grade column. I had Notre Dame at 9-3 at the beginning of the season, and this kind of goes back to the very first question. The title of this YouTube video and this podcast, if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, thank you so much. The title of this video is How Are the Expectations Altered? And that is kind of a theme. Every single one of these questions that we ask, you can kind of resurface that question throughout it. And I think that the expectations for me, I might be leaning more I put it this way at blueandgold.com. I had 9-3 at the beginning of the year, and I think that's still a possibility. This team could still go 9-3, but I'm definitely leaning more toward 10-2 with a 1-2 record in those big games against USC, Ohio State, Clemson. But at this point, I think it's more likely Notre Dame wins 2 of 3 of those games and doesn't drop any one of those ACC games or whoever you think they could also lose to, which that was my prediction at the beginning of the year. Was I think Notre Dame's going to go 1-2 against those 2-3 teams, and I think they're going to drop something like a Duke or an NC State. I don't think a Wake Forest or a Pitt at home. I was really looking at NC State and Duke. But now I'm thinking if Sam Hartman is firing on all cylinders and the offensive line plays this way, they shouldn't lose to an NC State or Duke, should they, Darren?
Absolutely not. NC State's always scared me a little bit going to Raleigh, and Brennan Armstrong getting reunited with his offensive coordinator from Virginia where he threw for over 4,000 yards. So that's concerning. And this is a little apples and oranges because of personnel, but NC State has picked off Hartman 6 times in the last 2 meetings. That obviously catches your attention. But again, personnel is going to be a whole lot different and a different offensive system.
Yeah, Mike Singer, our esteemed colleague at blueandgold.com, both of our friend. He's our friend. He said he had them going 11-1, just saying. So again, in my Hey Horka, there's a written version of this. It's a premium article. You have to be a subscriber. I answer more than the questions that we're going to be answering today. I said if I had to pick between 11-1 or 9-3 today, I think I lean 11-1. But like you said, Darren, your preseason pick was 10-2. That's what you said, right?
Yeah.
I think that's right in there right now. But with what we saw from the offensive line, which is the question that we're dissecting right now, and what we saw from Sam Hartman, which is what we talked about earlier, Notre Dame could beat a USC. Did you see USC give up 28 points to San Jose State?
Same old.
Exactly. And I know they scored 56 points, so you're going to have to outscore Caleb Williams and company. But did you not see, and I know it was Navy, but just the operation of the offense, and maybe we should talk about Jared Parker here a little bit. Is that a question that we're going to get to? I don't think I'll be through that in there. So let's just touch on that really quickly. What'd you see from him? I thought he was good.
Balance. I think it obviously helps having Hartman as your quarterback, a guy that's 24 years old, but I like the communication between the two. If Hartman didn't like that play, Parker wasn't going to shove it down his throat. He said, hey, we have to be on the same page. So for game 1, terrific game plan. You love the start. A lot of people thought, well, the Irish might get off to a slow start and they'll build and then blow them out. Hey, they were good from the get-go. So I think there's absolutely nothing to complain about on the offensive side of the football. That was a picture-perfect day. Had I told you on May 1st the results were going to be like this, I mean, you would have been like, I'll take it right now.
Yeah. And again, we're obviously doing this live on YouTube right now. So if you're listening at home, I'm about to show everybody a video of what I thought was one of the better calls in the game. Now, let me set the scene here. I screen grabbed this while I was on airplane Wi-Fi today, and airplane Wi-Fi is not very good. It's a miracle I got an article up on the plane. You could either go 1 hour, 4 hours, or 8 hours, and it's tiered pricing, obviously. It's a 9.5-hour flight. They were going to serve food at some point. And I was like, okay, I'll just wait until that. So I'll watch a movie. I watched The Big Lebowski. And then I guess we can't show the video actually, but I can describe the play. Mike Singer is saying it's a copyright issue. It's on my Twitter though. I guess YouTube has different rules. I'm new to the YouTube live thing for sure, guys. You have to understand that. So if you are listening at home on Apple or Spotify, and if you're listening on YouTube right now, let me set the scene. It's and I can tell you the situation too. It's 14-0 Notre Dame, early second quarter, and obviously Notre Dame has the ball, 1st and 10. I believe this is the first play of a drive. Notre Dame's on its own 22-yard line, and Notre Dame throws a tunnel screen to Jaden Thomas, and it's not even a bubble. It's perfectly executed where Navy's showing, I want to say 7 in the box. With 4, I wish I could show you guys this. 7 in the box, 4 players at the yard to gain markers, so like 10 yards downfield. Sam Hartman fakes to his left and then throws it out to Jaden Thomas to his right. By that point, he already had enough defenders going the other way. Now Mike Singer's telling me to play it to see if they copyright it. I don't want this whole video to get taken down, but Mike, double down on that in the comments. If you really want me to play this, say it again and I will, just so I can stop blabbering and trying to set the scene. I'm a writer, I swear. I just haven't slept in sorry, I had you muted, Darren. I just hadn't slept in like 5 days.
Just say courtesy of NBC Sports and we should be fine.
Yeah, this is courtesy of NBC Sports. Obviously, that's the home of Notre Dame football. Let's roll the tape. Let's roll the tape here. So there it is. You got Hartman faking left, throwing to his right. By that point, Rocco Spindler, look at Rocco Spindler and Zeke Correll get out there in front. Jaden Thomas goes underneath of Rocco Spindler's block. By that point, he's got a head of steam and can easily gain, what was that, 15, 20-yard gain on the first play of a drive. That is Jared Parker doing some work, setting the tone. I talked about Notre Dame taking away momentum from the Navy offense. How about Notre Dame giving its own offense some momentum? That was a perfect example of that.
Tyler, let me sneak in. Andrew had a question a couple of moments ago.
Yeah, let me see if I can find it.
Yeah, it was one of those $4.99 ones. And Andrew wants to know, Tyler, is Greathouse forcing his way into a starting role? Dating back to the spring game, he seems like Hartman's favorite target. And let me say this. Greathouse was on the field for 8 snaps. He had 3 targets, 3 catches, 2 touchdowns.
How about Greathouse only being on the field for 8 snaps? If you watched that game, you felt like he was out there for 80 snaps. And I don't even think Notre Dame ran 80 offensive plays because they were so efficient they didn't need to. Yeah, this is a super chat from Andrew Gilmore, by the way, $4.99, like you said, Darren. So appreciate you for that, Andrew. Always very, very active in the chat. Appreciate you doing what you do. To answer your question, there's an article, and let me try to find this. I'm getting the hang of this screen sharing thing. I posed the question before the game, so sometime mid last week. Could Jaden Greathouse and Rico Flores? I think Rico Flores played more than Jaden Greathouse. Actually, let's bring up the snap counts. There's snap counts here on these Pro Football Focus charts that I have. And Rico Flores Jr. isn't going to be near the top of it because he didn't produce a whole lot. But tell me if you see him, Darren. There's my jet lag brain going to work here. I know he's somewhere. I think he actually played more than 19 snaps. Rico Flores Jr. played 19 snaps, toward the bottom of the list on the grades. But my question at the beginning of the week last week was, I think Jaden Greathouse and Rico Flores might be the two most talented wide receivers that Notre Dame has on the roster right now. And we might have even talked about this in last week's show. I don't remember, but you only have 9 scholarship wide receivers. One of them is a former running back in Chris Tyree. One of them is a former walk-on in Matt Salerno. Tobias Merriweather had a catch last year. We'll see what his potential eventually is. But I think Jaden Greathouse is the best wide receiver on this team right now, Andrew. So to answer your question, yes, I think he is playing his way into a starting role. Now, Chris Tyree has the seniority, obviously, but Darren, who's the better? Jaden Greathouse has been doing this for years, and he's doing it right away in college. I just think he is everything you want in a wide receiver.
Tyler, I think Marcus Freeman made a good point yesterday during his press conference that when they studied Greathouse and Flores, they understood those two players at the high school level were being coached like college players. And that probably has a lot to do with them being able to adapt to the college game and this Notre Dame offense so quickly. And I have a feeling we're probably going to see a lot more of those guys on Saturday. Tennessee State obviously is an FCS school. They were 4-7 last year, and we're expecting a blowout despite the jet lag week. But I would have to imagine once Notre Dame gets a sizable lead, you might see constant Greathouse and Flores in this game, which is going to be exciting for the fans and exciting for their development.
Absolutely. And I will say, to Tom DeMay's point on the YouTube chat here, I did think Tyree looked good. I mean, it was a good sign. Did he only have the one catch? Or he had a couple catches, I think it was. We can
3 for 36.
3? Yeah. And a couple of those, he was wide open, right? You love to see your slot wide receiver getting wide open. Now, is that a Navy deficiency? Probably. But you love to see Chris Tyree running wide open over the middle of the field. I thought that was a great sign. We're about 30 minutes into this thing, Darren. So we're going to have so many spin-off conversations. That's what I love about these shows. But let's see what we got next.
I tell you what, we probably should pay some bills really quick since we're halfway through.
We
have
should.
some important information to talk about.
I do. And I'm not going to blabber as much as I did last time. I'm just going to go straight from the ad read. But Augie's locker room, look, it is game week. And Augie's locker room is the place to be. If you're coming to the game this weekend, got to go to Augie's locker room. I'm about to tell you why. Because it's Notre Dame football season. When you can come for a game, you've got to make it to Augie's locker room. They have a wide selection of Notre Dame stadium pieces, jerseys, helmets, autographs, and one-of-a-kind Rockney items. You can find exclusive Joe Montana signed items, which at the beginning of this show, I told everybody that I saw Joe Montana in the flesh. I was about 15 feet away from him at the Brazen Head pub in Dublin, Ireland. But nobody was getting autographs from Joe Montana that day. He had, I wouldn't call it an entourage or a posse or anything like that, but he had some people around him. It was family time. Again, like I said, I saw his son. So you would have been in the wrong if you walked up to Joe Montana to get an autograph. But you can go to Augie's locker room in South Bend, Indiana, less than a mile from campus, I believe it is, to get an autographed item from Joe Montana and famous sculptor Jerry McKenna's replicas of the bronze statues around the stadium. Augie gets new items all the time. If he doesn't have it in his store, he'll find it for you. Visit Augie at 1811 South Bend Avenue and see the vintage helmet display dating back to 1890. I mean, we're talking, 130 years? That's a lot of helmets right there. Amazing items. The helmets are some of them. You want to see them all. Visit Augie's-locker-room.com. Or no dashes there. I guess that's just in the ad read. Augie'sLockerRoom.com, 574-277-6363. Darren, I asked you last week, but we need to tell everybody every single week. You've been to Augie's Locker Room. What do you like about it?
It just has, it's almost like you're going to shop, but it's almost like going to a museum. That's the best way to put it. It's just absolutely remarkable. If you're a Notre Dame fan, you're going to spend quite a bit of time in there. And I noticed a lot of people are asking, where exactly is it? I think this will help a lot of people. It's a couple of stumbles away from the linebacker.
Yeah, I've never look, put it this way. When I go to if you're gonna do those two things, I'd go to Augie's locker room first, get your shopping out of the way, get your sightseeing. I mean, you can go in there just to sightsee. I would personally buy a few items and help Augie out because everything in there is worth buying. But get your stuff, maybe take it back to the hotel, take it back where you're staying, and then go to the linebacker. Just do some scouting. When you go to Augie's locker room, then you drive by the linebacker, you say, okay, yeah, that's where we're going next, because you don't want to have a couple 32 ounces at the linebacker then go. Or maybe you do. Maybe Augie wants you to, because if you're within reason, maybe you start buying a lot of more stuff than you wouldn't if you didn't have those 32 ounces. So, but point being, yes, very close to the linebacker, and everyone knows that the linebacker is right by campus. So Augie's locker room, if you're going to the Tennessee State game, Central Michigan, Ohio State, I mean, 3 of the next 4 weeks, Notre Dame's at home, right? You've got to get to Augie's locker room.
Sounds good to me. It's a plan. Let's just reset. This is Hey Horka, the second edition of Hey Horka on the Blue and Gold YouTube channel. That's Tyler Horka, fresh off the bird from Europe. I'm Darin Pritchett from WSBT Radio in South Bend. Tyler and I actually worked together on the Game Day Sports Beat pregame show on 960 AM WSBT and WSBTradio.com on game day. Just for an example, we'll be on from noon until 2:30 this Saturday. And then, of course, the game will start at 3:30 against Tennessee State. Here's an interesting question, and this is something that I didn't notice during the game necessarily, but when I looked at the game stats after the game, it immediately popped up. When you think of Notre Dame football the last 15, 20 years, what do they like to be known as? Tight end U, right?
Absolutely.
Well, after last year, Drew Pine looked at Michael Mayer almost every play, and there's a reason for that. Other times,
101 times if you're counting at home. 101
times. Open guy, but I understand going for Michael. But here's what I noticed: there was not one tight end targeted by Irish quarterbacks in that game. And knowing the history of this offense, that's very surprising. So, Arrow fan 624 wants to know, Tyler, your thoughts on the lack of tight end production.
Yeah. I mean, I had the benefit of being at the game, so I kind of got a sense for everything that was happening. To your point, Darren, I noticed it in the game. And maybe that is because what we saw last year with a combination of Tyler Buckner and Drew Pine, mostly Drew Pine, targeting Michael Mayer 101 times in 12 games. He didn't even play the bowl game. That's a lot of targets. And then you go to 0 for 3 tight ends who I think it was 3 tight ends who played. We're looking here at Holden Stays, Mitchell Evans, Davis Sherwood. 27 players registered Pro Football Focus grades on the Notre Dame offense. Tight ends ranked 24, 25, and 27. And what does Tobias Merriweather, who's 26, have in common with those 3 tight ends? Didn't catch a football. Now, he got targeted a couple of times. We remember the non-PI call, and maybe my jet lag brain's kicking in, but I don't remember the other target. I do know that he got targeted 2 times, though. The tight ends got targeted no times. And that's going to bring your offensive grade from Pro Football Focus here down significantly, and your passing grade as well, because receiving stats figure into that. And then you want to look at blocking grades too, run blocking. I'm just trying to get my bearings here. Is over here. Davis Sherwood, he's the H-back. You need him to run block. He posts a 53.3 in run blocking. Mitchell Evans, he's your number 1 tight end. He posts a 57.5 in run blocking. So if you're not going to be catching passes or even generating targets, you need to be doing all those little things, right, Darren? And we didn't see that. So production's twofold for me. These tight ends don't need to catch a whole lot of passes. We just talked about a freshman potentially being Notre Dame's most talented wide receiver in Jaden Greathouse. That is phenomenal. That is the future. That's potential. So you don't need a Michael Mayer on this team, but what you do need is serviceable tight ends. I didn't see enough of it in both phases, both the passing game and the running game. And to answer Arrowfan 624's question, shout out Arrowfan, one of the best guys that we have on the blueandgold.com message board. If you want to get in the mix with him, on a daily basis, definitely sign up for blueandgold.com right now. To answer his question, I think this is going to be the norm, Darren. I'll let you take it away here in a minute, but I don't see, and look, I don't see a Michael Mayer on a lot of other teams across the country. So let's just say that he's one of one. But I don't think I see anything close to Michael Mayer. And then I don't see a healthy Eli Raridan on the field right now either, which puts this tight end group at the three guys that I just mentioned. Davis Sherwood's a former walk-on, like I said, serviceable player. Notre Dame loves to play him at the H-back position. I mean, but he only played 10 snaps. Holden Stays played 39. Mitchell Evans played 50. So you're really relying on two guys, and they just didn't do a whole lot for me in either phase of the game. What about you, Darren?
I think Holden Stays is coming. I think by mid-season, I think you're going to see an impact player. In fact, it wouldn't surprise me if they don't split him out every once in a while. So I think his development is still coming. Mitchell Evans, we saw him get the start in the Gator Bowl. He had 3 catches down there and a touchdown. Obviously, Raridan's kind of the key. You wish he was ready at this particular point, but give him credit. He felt like he came back too quick from the ACL the first time, so he's being more patient this time. You know, Tyler, maybe toward the end of the year, he starts to make an impact because he might have one of the higher ceilings of this group in terms of being a pass catcher. But I think something tells me Holden Stays is going to be a factor in the passing game before it's all said and done. It may not happen right away. I think eventually he's someone to watch out for.
And what do you think about Eli Raridan? I mean, I was at practice 12 times this fall, and he looked like he could practice to me, or he could play. And obviously they're being cautious with him. 2 ACL tears in like 10 months, I think it was. That's scary. But you know what else is scary? Eli Raridan when he's at full force. This might be a situation, Darren. You just talked up Holden Stays. I've been on the Eli Raridan bandwagon for a long time, before that ACL injury, obviously, and even after it. Are those the 2 most talented tight ends on this team?
I think you can make that argument. I'm big on Raridan too. I was disappointed that he just wasn't to the point to be a factor as of yet. I am extremely high on him. So Stays and Raridan, I think the Irish are in good hands. And it sure seems like the coaching staff, I don't want to put words in their mouth, so you can validate this or say I'm nuts, but I got the sense that Cooper Flanagan is farther along as a freshman than the coaches anticipated. Now, that doesn't mean he's going to start getting 30 snaps a game, don't get me wrong, but it sure seems like that they really feel like he's progressing a lot sooner than expected.
And what was the ultimate example or indication of that? He's on special teams. What is it? Primary kick return, I think. He's one of the primary blockers out there. So they trust that he could play. And I think if you're going to play him on special teams every single game and burn his red shirt, don't you think he's going to eventually play offensively, especially for a position group that, why are we talking about it right now? Because Aerofan624 asked the question, no production. What do you think about it? What do you think moving forward? Michael Mayer caught passes as a true freshman. Cooper Flanagan's wearing number 87. Like, there's some parallel. He's not Michael Mayer, but if he's a good player, then play him, right?
Tyler, let me go back to something, because you did that great work right after Hartman picked Notre Dame. You went through every Wake Forest game and you analyzed everything Hartman did in those games. And I'm going off the top of my head trying to picture Wake Forest stats. But am I right? Hartman didn't go to the tight end that often. Now, he had a really good set of wide receivers. Let me emphasize that. But I don't think the tight end was a big part of the Wake Forest offense. So I don't know if that's just that offense, or this was a game where the Navy defensive backs were playing so far off the wide receivers, it was easy pickings. That's better for you to judge at the game, because sometimes TV blocks us from everything we need to see. But it could be something that Sam has been so used to throwing to the wide receivers in the Wake Forest offense. Maybe that's something that will develop in time. That's just a wild guess.
Yeah, and I'm pulling up Wake Forest stats right now. Bad podcasting for those who are listening at home, but I'm about to show them. I think I remember all these guys' names. Let's see. This is Wake Forest receiving stats last year. A.T. Perry, wide receiver. Taylor Moore, and wide receiver. Jamal Banks, Keyshawn Williams, Donovan Green. Those are all wide receivers. Blake Whiteheart. I think that's who we're looking at right here. Let me just make sure he's a tight end. He is. Let's go back here. So if you're listening at home, so these ads on Sports Reference are crazy. But if you're listening at home, Blake Whiteheart was Wake Forest tight end last year. He was the number 1 tight end. 24 catches, 295 yards, 3 touchdowns. As we said, there are no Notre Dame tight ends on pace for that right now because everyone's on pace for 0. Once they actually catch a pass, that will change. To go back to what you were saying, Darren, I think that's a combination of Sam Hartman throwing the ball to the outside, wanting to get A.T. Perry catches, Donovan Green catches, Jamal Banks. Those are all wide receivers right there. And what is the tight end doing most of the time? Some curls and some hitches and some digs over the middle of the field. That's not really where Sam Hartman's looking all the time. Look, where was Jaden Greathouse's first touchdown caught? I know he's a slot guy, but it was a fade. It was a seam route. It was a seam route down the middle of the field. He's looking deep. He's looking to the edges. Tight ends aren't normally there. So, Darren, I think you raise an excellent point. I'll ask you right now before I take this off the screen. Do you think a Notre Dame tight end gets to 24 catches, 295 yards, 3 touchdowns this season?
We got 11 games left in the regular season.
Yeah.
And with all those wide receivers that are in the mix right now, you saw the running backs targeted, multiple running backs targeted. Boy, there's only one football to go around, Tyler. I don't know. That might be a stretch. Maybe the tight end room gets 30 catches for the year. Is that too low? But I don't know if one single guy gets to 24. That's tough.
Yeah. There's a good point here made by Kevin Pluta. Did Notre Dame keep the tight ends kind of in line to help with blitz pickup against Navy? Yeah. My colleague Jack Sobel rewatched the offense. I was focused on the defense. I mentioned that a little bit earlier on today. Definitely a possibility there, I would say. But what I'm looking for now is Notre Dame Pro Football Focus. You can find, and maybe we'll just have to save this conversation for another day to answer that question. Pro Football Focus, you can see how many routes these guys actually ran. So, yeah, I really want to try to pull this up. So, just thoughts on that really quickly, Darren, while I try to get this up. When you were watching the game, is that something you saw where the tight ends were just block? We don't want you to run routes?
Partially. I didn't keep track of that, to be perfectly honest with you. I was spending so much time focusing on the skill position players, to be quite honest with you, because they were coming out at a quick rate. But, yeah, that's fair to bring up. I think once we get further into the schedule, NC State, we'll start to learn a lot more about what Coach Parker wants to do. Hey, and I think you nailed it a moment ago. With the way the defensive backs were playing off the receivers, I mean, it was easy pickings for Hartman to find the guy he was looking for. So I think that was just a game where the tight end wasn't focused on. Next game, it might be totally different. Who knows? But they obviously missed Bauman. I mean, they've been without him so much due to injuries. He's kind of that balanced tight end. It'd be great to have him, but I'll stick with Stays and Raritan as we move forward. They're going to be very exciting players for this football team, and I'm just excited Sam Hartman did not get sacked, did not have an interception. It was just a really solid, clean performance by that front. And all the talk about the chemistry of the offensive line looked good, at least for the first game.
Absolutely. So, unfortunately, I can't tell you how many routes they ran because Pro Football Focus sorts its offensive statistics. And when you get into the more streamlined stuff by so for example, when I go to offense receiving, you have to register a receiving grade or you had to have been targeted. and they weren't targeted, so I can't tell you how many receiving routes they ran because they don't even appear on the chart. Is that not the most telling thing in all of this, that I can't even tell you how many routes they ran because they didn't even register? It's like Corey Seager's batting 350 or whatever this season, but he hasn't had enough at bats to qualify for the batting title, so he's like out of the race unless he stays healthy the rest of the year. Right now, the Notre Dame tight ends are out of the race in the worst way.
Andrew made an interesting point. He said, I think Notre Dame was purposely trying to establish the wide receivers. When things settle in, the tight end will factor in.
Yeah, no, for sure. And we'll end this conversation with that. If you have wide receivers to establish them. Throw the ball to Jaden Greathouse. Jaden Thomas, to me, looks like a number one wide receiver. I was saying all off season that, yeah, he could be that guy. He could be that guy. I showed the tunnel screen earlier. The touchdown was terrific. He can catch footballs at all three phases from what I see. Establish that guy. If Deion Colsey is going to be a 1, 2, 3 catch, token catch per game type of guy, if he can give you that touchdown 5 to 6 times per year, that's going to help you. If he can catch another big pass like he did last year on third down, that's going to help you. Establish Chris Tyree. That's a great point by Andrew Gilmore, because I totally agree, and I think you do too, Darren. Let's move this thing along to the finale, right?
All right. Let's see. We've got 2 left. Let's go with Slev Mania. Do you see Notre Dame making a 5-man running back rotation and a 7-man wide receiver rotation a regular thing this season? Or do you think they'll narrow it down by Ohio State?
So obviously there's 2 parts to that question. The running back thing, I think that's the more interesting one, because we actually had another message board poster who kind of responded to that question and was like, why don't they just establish Audric Estime, and look what he does when he has the ball? Why can't he be getting it 20 to 25 times a game as opposed to 15 to 20, which it was 16 on Saturday, right? 16 for 95 and a touchdown. Let me tell you what Audric Estime's stats would be if he went for the exact same stat line that he went for on Saturday. If he had 16 carries for 95 yards and 1 touchdown every single game, and he had 2 catches for, or I think it was, 2 catches for 300 or 2 catches for 26 yards. If he does that over a 13-game season, and Notre Dame wants to play a 14-game season, but this is just 13, 208 carries, 1,235 yards, 13 touchdowns. That's 5.9 yards per carry. 26 catches for 338 yards. And he's bound to catch a couple touchdowns in there too. But that's just projecting out based on what he had. Let me say that again. 208 carries, 1,235 yards, 5.9 yards per carry, 13 touchdowns, 26 catches, 338 yards. So if you're sitting there at home screaming, Estime, he's losing carries. He only, I think Notre Dame registered 32 carries. He had exactly half of them. Why isn't he getting 3/4 or whatever it is? Would you not take those numbers, Darren, for an entire season?
Those are massive numbers. Absolutely, you would take that in a second. I think maybe something we should think about, Tyler, when we have these conversations. I don't mean to jump ahead, but we're in the media. We're not a player. We're not a coach. We can look ahead. But that Ohio State game, I think, as our messenger pointed out, is it going to be different for Ohio State? Well, if you look at the running back room, I think it might be different. We all should respect the Ohio State pass rush. It's going to be a challenge for what we hope is a really good Fighting Irish offensive line. And that might be a situation where you put your best running back protectors in the ball game. If you've got, hypothetically speaking, 2 of your 5 that aren't very good in that area, they're not going to be in the ball game on third down. So I think it's going to be pared down due to circumstances in that Ohio State game. Audric's going to be your running back number 1. I think it's going to be interesting to see who's going to be number 2 at that point. I think they like Payne's blitz pickup. So he's probably going to be in the conversation at Ohio State. I'll tell you what, the Price kid just looks electric. And so you got him. You got Ford, who has experience at Penn State. You got a lot of different ways to go, but I think you got to make sure on third down in particular against Ohio State, you better have a running back that's willing to stick his nose in there and protect his quarterback.
Absolutely. And that's a great point. And if that's Devin Ford, then the running back rotation, has to expand to five guys. What did he get? 1 carry the other night? But if he can protect, then he's got to be in the game. If it's Jabron Payne, how many carries did Jabron Payne have? It's got to be Jabron Payne, right? So there's nuance to this, obviously. And I think the reason you have so many different running backs playing is kind of what we talked about on the pregame show, Darren, and then last week as well. If they can all do different things, then you play them all, right? Like Darin Pritchett isn't going to score a 19-yard touchdown on his first carry of every single game, but there were probably a lot of other guys who you put in that exact same spot and for whatever reason doesn't jump through the massive hole that there was as quickly or, whatever it is. Maybe that doesn't go for a touchdown if it's anybody, but it's Darin Pritchett, so it does go for a touchdown. Jeremiah Love had a very strong play where everyone talks about him as just the speedster. There's some strength in that frame too. So they can all play. I think they all will play. And again, it all circles back to what I said about Audric Estime's stats. If he can give you that every single game, you take it and you play your other guys. At wide receiver, Darren, I'll let you take this one first. 7-man rotation. That's what it was. We can look at I'll look at the snaps, but basically in the 9 scholarship wide receiver room, your only guys who weren't playing were Braylon James, true freshman, and KK Smith, true freshman, who is injured, and you're not going to see him probably all year. Do you stick with all 7 of these guys going forward? Is Matt Salerno in the regular rotation for you?
I always go back to the Ohio State game. I feel like that's the barometer. How am I going to handle my personnel against Ohio State? I think Jaden Thomas is the one guy that needs to be on the field at all times. That is as close to an alpha as you're going to have this year. But you're going to give Tobias Merriweather another shot. Try to see what he can do. Keep working with him. A lot of talent there. Let's see if we can get some good plays to happen on the field with him, get him some confidence. Tyree looks great. I mean, Great House. I don't mean to make the Blue Gold game a barometer, but that coupled with what we saw on Saturday, the kid knows how to run routes. It sure seems like he's really good at understanding zone and where to go. I mean, he's way ahead of his time. It sure feels like to me. So do I go 7 deep against Ohio State, Tyler? I just don't think I can go that deep.
Okay.
But if everybody's playing well, I would have to think Thomas, Merriweather, Tyree, Greathouse are on the field and in the rotation. Flores is coming too, so it's hard to take him off the field. I hope I'm not leaving somebody out here. Oh, Colsey. And
Colsey.
We'll see how Colsey's role expands, but I don't know if I can go any further than that against the elite teams on my schedule.
I've got some interesting stats courtesy of Pro Football Focus here. You nailed it with the first 3 guys that you mentioned. Slightly out of order, though, Darren. I'm looking at receiving routes run. Tobias Merriweather actually ran the most receiving routes of any Notre Dame player in that game. He ran 19 routes where he was actively looking to have the ball thrown his way, only generated 2 targets. Do the math on that. That's not a great target share. Jaden Thomas, 17 routes, 4 targets, caught all 4 of his passes. Listen to this drop-off. Tobias Merriweather, 19. Jaden Thomas, 17. Chris Tyree, 9 receiving routes run. 4 targets, 3 catches. That's a pretty good day at the office where if you're targeted on almost half of the routes that you run and then you catch a third, you're catching a pass on a third of the routes that you run. Good day at the office. Jaden Greathouse ran 7 routes and he was targeted 3 times. He had 3 catches. So you're right in that same ballpark of almost half. And then obviously the receptions is a little bit higher than Tyree's percentage there. And then you mentioned Deion Colzie. How about this for Deion Colzie? 4 receiving routes run, 3 targets, 3 catches. That's you mentioned, does he expand his role? Does he? I'm going to ask you point blank. Is it coming for Deion Colzie?
He's the one we've talked about that it's hard to define where he fits in. You got Thomas and Merriweather, who seem like they are, or at least in the offseason, ready to take the big jump, and Thomas appears to be doing that. Then you got the young pups. Tyler, it's tough. I'll say this. I mean, don't you agree? And this is an if at this point. I'm not going to base an entire season on one game. But if you don't see consistency in production out of Merriweather, doesn't that open the door for Colzie then to get that opportunity? Or Colzie just starts playing so well, it forces the hand of the coaching staff.
The interesting thing there is I think Notre Dame loves Jaden Thomas at boundary. And to me, the only position Deion Colzie can play is boundary. So if Tobias Merriweather phases out of this rotation, which I don't want to say that lowers the ceiling of this offense, but it takes a little bit away. Like you thought you had a little deep threat with Tobias Merriweather, and you still have deep threats on this team, but that straight line burning type thing that Merriweather has that you saw against Stanford last year, you lose that. And if you do lose that, I think you have to shuffle Jaden Thomas over to field and then put Deion Colzie at boundary, which I believe is what we were seeing. I think Jaden Thomas was playing slot in the spring. That's how versatile that guy is. But so you can move Jaden Thomas. I mean, look, if Tobias Merriweather has 2 or 3 more games like that before Ohio State, you can't keep doing it. It's the definition of insanity. You can't keep running him out on the field, but he's got time to improve. I think Notre Dame's best lineup is when he's maybe not, he doesn't have to be a starter, but a factor. I think Notre Dame's best offense is if he were to be a factor, but if he's not a factor, I think you take him off the field. Deion Colzie produced more than Tobias Merriweather did in far fewer opportunities. So to answer the overall question, and we'll move on to this last question. Even though Matt Salerno had that awesome catch against Ohio State last year, if you have 6 guys and Tobias Merriweather is one of those that you run out there and you feel comfortable can make a big play, I don't think you see a whole lot of Matt Salerno against Ohio State. So that wide receiver rotation is going to live in like the 5 to 7 range for sure.
I wouldn't be surprised if they don't try to get Merriweather involved very early in the game against Tennessee State. Get his hands on the football.
And to that point, Matt Boer, I hope I pronounced that right. What if Merriweather has 0 catches again this next game? If he runs 19 routes and doesn't catch a pass against Tennessee State, you have an issue. You run into hey, let's have an intervention. Like, can we keep putting him on the field this much type of thing? So breakout game. It needs to be one for Tobias Merriweather. We need to see him do something.
Before we get to the last question, a couple of people have mentioned this in the chat, and it's worth mentioning. Maris Leofau was fantastic. I joked on SportsBeat, you always know where he is because of his long hair, and he was playing like his hair was on fire in that ball game. I mean, he was pursuing the ball. That was an outstanding performance. He and Kaiser, I thought, were off the chart good in that game.
And what were the number 2 and 3 graded players from Pro Football Focus? Yeah, JJB number 1 and Jack Kaiser number 2, Maris Leofau number 3. So, yeah, those guys were good. And I think I'm about to talk about the defense right now. Spoiler. Darren, what's that last question?
All right, this is from KCN Demis 97. What parts of the team do you think we can gain more insight on after the Tennessee State game? What would be a good indicator of what Notre Dame is against a team so inferior?
when you have a team that you're supposed to blow out like this, you're playing an FCS team for the first time in program history, which go to the message board, blueandgold.com. There's a lot of people that aren't very happy about that. I'm miffed. I mean, Notre Dame just got off a flight. I'm about to go to sleep as soon as this thing ends. In the next 5 to 10 minutes, I swear I'm off the bed. I guarantee you Notre Dame players a couple days ago when they got home did the same thing. Yeah, there's a lot of people that aren't happy about. So let's just briefly mention that, Darren, because I saw your face and you were like, but it's Notre Dame is obviously one of, I think is it 2 schools now that's never played an FCS team?
For a long time, it was USC, UCLA, and Notre Dame. Those,
and I think
could have changed.
I think one of them played an FCS team last year. So, yeah, I think USC maybe is going to be the last team standing. You guys can look that up, but that's kind of the situation. There's a lot of people that are angry about tearing down history or whatever it is. Here's the rebuttal to that. This is history. 2 black head coaches, which is a really big deal. Marcus Freeman and Eddie George were both very happy that Notre Dame's playing an HBCU. Notre Dame is inviting a historically black college and university to South Bend to play a major college football game in front of 77,000 people. I think that's pretty cool. A lot of people think that the FCS thing trumps that. Yeah, everyone's entitled to their own opinions for sure. Eddie George went to Ohio State. Marcus Freeman went to Ohio State. Like, the storylines are pretty cool here. A lot of people on the message board angry about that. Darren, are you?
No, I don't feel that passionately about it. And my 25th year being here in town covering the Irish comes in December. And there's a lot of things that were very traditional that people are going to be so upset about. We've kind of moved on. There were so many people, Tyler, oh my gosh, natural grass is gone. They're getting field turf, the history, don't put in a video board. And now you take a look at November, the field, you don't have to worry about it. The video board, if used a little better, could be a very important tool in helping getting the crowd excited in home games. It's still pretty good right now, but I think it can be better based on what we see in other stadiums. So there's a lot of things people have been upset about through the years. And then you know what? Time moves on. Everything's okay. I thought I was going to hate the Nike symbol on the Major League Baseball jerseys. And now I don't notice it anymore. You know, you get over it. So
I do hate, I think Houston has a huge ad and maybe some other teams like right on the sleeve. And you'll see a batter. And that's all you see in the broadcast. Ew.
Yeah. Well, I look at it this way, Tyler. If fans don't want them to play an FCS school, then they should say to the team, don't go to Europe.
Yeah.
Because in 2012, the team was sleepwalking against Purdue, Tyler. It was one of those games which Everett Golson was the starting quarterback. And at that time, Tommy Reese knew the 2-minute drill better than Everett Golson. So with the game tied with 2 minutes or so to go, they put in Tommy Reese, and I don't think the fans were very excited about that at the time, but he led them down the field, game-winning field goal, and they got out of Dodge winning by a field goal in a game. Had they lost, they would have went to the championship game against Alabama. So yeah, I lived it. It was a tough game for the guys. Purdue was not, if I remember correctly, and people listening can yell at me in the chat, but I don't think they were that great that year. So that could have been a devastating loss. They got through it. So that's just part of going overseas. I think you have to be really, really careful who you play in that next game. And I don't mean to be disrespectful to Tennessee State, but they were 4-7 last year. And I have a feeling it's probably going to be a pretty easy day on Saturday. So I think if you're mad about it, then tell Jack Swerbrick and Pete Ravacco, don't go to Europe anymore. Let's just play the game at Notre Dame Stadium.
I should know this by now, but is it a thing where they could have scheduled this FCS game or chosen a bye, like they had the options? Or if they didn't schedule the FCS, would the schedule have kind of came out? And I think it's a thing where they could have had a bye week. I would have chosen that personally. But if you are going to choose an FCS team, you see the article on the screen if you're watching on YouTube. I wrote about it for Blue and Gold Illustrated. For the reason you mentioned, Darren, going to Europe and just getting back and playing the next week, that makes sense for it to be an FCS team. And then the Eddie George thing, the HBCU thing, I just think it's kind of cool. Like there's other there's other FCS teams that would not move the needle. I think Tom DeMay on the chat said, because it's Eddie George, because it's an HBCU, like this is kind of cool. It makes me get up a little bit for it, get up for it a little bit more. So there's all of that. And now let's get to the question. And I think you segued it perfectly until I just went on a little mini rant there. This should be a blowout. And if it's not, bad look for Notre Dame. Now I think it's going to be. I think I picked 48-7. I think Notre Dame, and we make our picks for the magazine before the game before that is played, if that makes sense. So like last week, I made a Tennessee State prediction before the Navy game was even played. And this whole entire video is entitled, Do the Expectations Change? My expectations have changed a little bit. I think Notre Dame can hang 50 for sure, maybe even shut Tennessee State out. That would be a really nice score line, 56-0, somewhere in there. If it's like 45-21, you're sitting there thinking, oh no, like I thought this defense was good. How did Tennessee State score 21 points? So my answer to this question, Darren, is dominant defense is what Notre Dame can show me to let me know that, yeah, this team is going along nicely, taking care of business. Because if it was even like, I think 35 is probably a little light, but like if Notre Dame won 38-0, totally fine with that. Maybe Sam Hartman didn't even throw a pass in the fourth quarter. But if Notre Dame won 38-14, 45-14, even something like that, I'm starting to think, how the heck did Tennessee State score 14 points in South Bend? What is it for you, Darren? And it doesn't have to be a score. It could just be anything where you're like, yeah, Notre Dame did what they had to do. Let's move on to NC State.
That's a great question, because my answer coming in was basically if they win 47-0 or 72-0, it's kind of the same. And my point being, I don't think anybody wants to embarrass anybody else. You know what I'm saying in this particular situation? I don't think Marcus Freeman wants to win 72-0, but you do want to win convincingly in this particular ball game. If this football team comes ready to play and they execute, everything's going to take care of itself. I would be shocked if they score anything more than 14. I would be disappointed if they get to double digits, to be perfectly honest.
Yep.
So I'm going to set kind of a high standard this week. I think we should have a high standard for this football team. I had this conversation on my radio show last Wednesday where I just brought up this simply. If Notre Dame is going to be an elite team or has a chance to be an elite team, they should blow out Navy. None of this 35-28 or 35-20. If they are as good as we think they can be, they will blow out this Navy team. Now, I'm not guaranteeing they're going to be elite. I'm glad they blew them out. That makes me feel good. The team looks so good. So I just need for that to carry over. I don't want this to be a game in which they don't look good, because I don't care what other people think, but at the same time, I don't want to hear all the sports radio people and the writers and newspapers who anytime Notre Dame does something they think is negative, they have to write about it. If they beat Tennessee State 40-21, oh my gosh, the world's ending. I just don't want to deal with that garbage this week. So I just want to go out, play a solid game. Hopefully they stay healthy. Let's keep the momentum going. Don't have a step back. Momentum going, come right out of the gate, jump on them early, build a nice lead, and don't take the foot off the pedal and get ready for Raleigh and North Carolina State. So I just want to see consistency, and it should happen against this Tennessee State team.
Totally agree. And to me, it's you mentioned Notre Dame not wanting to embarrass Tennessee State. Obviously not, because there is, and that's what comes with Notre Dame scheduling. You get these magnitude games like week 0 magnitude. For everyone watching and listening, we talked about it earlier. We haven't talked about Ireland enough. I mean, I was there. It was incredible. That's magnitude. And now you're playing an FCS opponent for the first time. Everyone's talking about it on Monday. Go read the message board. It's a hot topic. That's magnitude. What other team in the country on August 29th has had so much to talk about in their first two opponents, whose opponents, I mean, those teams might win 5 games total this year between the two of them. That's a possibility. But we're talking about them, and we're talking about what Notre Dame is doing against them. So that's a Notre Dame thing. And you're right, Darren. You need Notre Dame to come out and take care of business. And taking care of business changes depending on the opponent. Taking care of business against Tennessee State at home is looking like 50 to, a lot to a little type of game. And specifically for me, it's defense. It's those linebackers. Somebody in the chat mentioned that Tennessee State has some good speed, some good offensive speed. There are multiple reasons why you would play at Tennessee State. Obviously, you can be a really good athlete, but something is holding you back from playing at one of these other schools. Jack Kaiser's playing for Notre Dame. Maris Leofau's playing for Notre Dame. J.D. Bertrand's playing for Notre Dame. They should be able to shut down the middle of the field. Benjamin Morrison should be able to lock down anyone he faces on Saturday. Anybody he faces, he should be able to lock them down. Cam Hart is 6'2", 6'3", with length that NFL scouts love. We've already heard that through some sources in fall camp and whatnot. He should be able to lock down anyone on Tennessee State, right, Darren? I mean, that's what I'm looking at. We thought Notre Dame shut down Navy when Navy had the ball, and they did. This is a more traditional offense. I was looking into it. Tennessee State's offensive coordinator comes from UTEP, where he was a wide receivers coach. So obviously he's going to want to pass the ball a little bit. I think it's an RPO-based offense. Notre Dame's going to see a lot of RPOs all season against a lot better athletes than Tennessee State. Shut these guys down because you can. It's like a Herb Brooks quote almost. That's what I want to see. And I think, Darren, you've pretty much said everything that you want to see as well.
Yeah. I want to end with this. Being in the broadcast business for 25 plus years and, doing some games myself, we had Mike Tirico for a couple of years on NBC, who, of course, is the best of the best. A rising star in the industry was Noah Eagle. And I really thought Noah brought up the best in Garrett in that game. Jason's still trying to get his feet wet as an analyst, but I felt like he drew information out of Jason, and it was a very enjoyable broadcast. And now Paul Burmeister is moving from radio to TV this week to work with Garrett. And Tony Simeone, one of my hockey buddies and does Notre Dame basketball, he's going to do the radio call. But Noah Eagle, his dad, Ian Eagles, of course, a terrific broadcaster on CBS, and Noah's going to be a terrific broadcaster as well. So it was really cool to hear him and Garrett work together on Saturday against Navy. And probably a couple of years, we'll be like, yeah, that's that kid that kind of got one of his first starts in the Notre Dame game. I know he did the Vikings-Colts game, the greatest comeback in NFL history last year, but I thought he did a really nice job, and I'm sure he didn't have all month to prepare for it. It sounds like this was kind of one of those last-moment situations. So, Noah, nice job.
If you were not told who it was before the game, and would you just say that was Ian Eagle?
Yes.
Holy moly. And that's a good thing. If you're Ian Eagle's son, it's a good thing to sound like your dad because he's got the voice for it. You recognize that talent, Darren, for sure. And I think the common person can hear it, know who's good, who's not as well. I think everybody's on the same page there.
Yeah. So Burmeister, he did the Tennessee Titans TV games during the preseason. So there's a big difference between radio and TV. I think he's going to hit a home run. In fact, I thought Burmeister might move from radio to TV 2 years ago. But he does a great job on the radio. So as a radio person, I don't want to lose him, but Paul's going to do a great job.
Apparently my jet lag might have set in earlier. If I said Ohio University, I didn't mean to. Obviously, I know where Eddie George played college football. Obviously, I know where Marcus Freeman played college football. I'm going to say something that actually I don't even really agree with it, but I just want to see how the chat reacts right before we sign off. They played at The Ohio State University. I do know that. So
you
sorry if I said that.
Calling it Ohio U.
Yeah.
By
You
the
don't
way,
want to be yeah.
really quick, Sam Hartman on Monday was on the Dan Patrick Show,
Mhm.
and he relayed the information. As a kid, he was a Michigan fan and didn't necessarily dislike Notre Dame, but that was kind of one of the rivals. But he really didn't like Ohio State, so he has a chance to hopefully take care of the team that he used to root against as a kid. But yeah, he was a Michigan guy as a kid.
That's a ABC game, right? I think it is.
The Notre Dame Ohio State game?
Yeah.
No, that's NBC.
Oh yeah, it's at home. It's at home.
Yeah.
Duh. And it doesn't matter if it's AB. There's jet lag again.
Yeah.
But College Game Day could theoretically be there, even though NBC has the broadcasting rights. Don't you think ESPN would play into that a million? Just get a camera right in front of Sam Hartman's face and just try to pry out of him how much he hated Ohio State when he was growing up.
That's got McAfee written all over it.
Yep. Yep. All right. Before
All right.
you do the official sign off, Darren, I just want to show. I showed everybody this hat that I got in Ireland. Awesome hat. If you ever do go to Ireland, go to the Brazen Head. Also need to go to the Jameson Distillery though, because I don't know if everyone can see that. This is actually something I got at the airport because I didn't have time to go to the Jameson Distillery, but you can only get this in Europe at European Union airports, I believe. So I was in Dublin airport at 7:30 a.m. Monday morning, passing through like the little kiosks or whatever. And I ended up going on to Madrid, like I said, and turns out they had these same bottles at the Madrid airport too. Feels a little less special that way. But again, it's a travel exclusive product of Ireland, triple distilled, triple cask, sherry, bourbon, and Malaga casks. I don't know if I said that right. For a subtle sweetness and extra drop of smoothness. 7:30 a.m. They let me sample it in the airport, and I was like, you know what? I might as well. I want to know what I'm getting. I cannot wait to dive into this. Has anyone ever had it in the Derek Galloway's giving away my secrets here. $100 plus for that bottle. I'm not going to tell you how much I paid, but I will say I bought 2 bottles because I want to get some home to my family at some point, whether they drive up here or whatever. I don't know how I'm going to get it to them, but they're going to get it. Got a free hat, got a free Jameson hat when I bought 2 bottles. So I don't know. I felt like I had to come back with something, Darren, and might as well come back with some of the greatest Irish whiskey you can get out there, right?
Hey, don't waste that Jameson on anybody or any occasion. That's got to be a special person and a special occasion. So I'm going to let you decide if Singer falls into that category. But I would make sure it's a real special occasion before you jump into that.
Let's put it this way. If I don't still have this bottle this time next year, something's gone terribly wrong. I've either been robbed or I've fallen on hard times because, like you said, this is only going to come out for the specialist of special occasions.
I tell you what, when Notre Dame beats Ohio State and we have Horka the following Monday, you're going to do a little sample.
Let's put that out there right now. If Notre Dame beats Ohio State on September 23rd on the Horka the following Monday, I will do a little shot of Jameson triple.
There you go. And if anybody out there has just Jameson or anything like that, send the videos to Tyler and hey, we'll make it happen on social media. We'll make it an event.
Yeah, it'll be fun. Yeah, I'll put it on social media too. Definitely follow me at TB Horka. The tweet that I put up earlier, I do all kinds of stuff like that at Twitter. Really try to be engaging with Notre Dame fans, X, whatever you want to call it now. I still call it Twitter, but a lot of Notre Dame fans live on that social media platform, and just the amount of content that we all put out there. Mike Singer does an excellent job with his Twitter account. Jack Sobel is getting into it, obviously. Kyle Kelly's got a tweet. Let's end with this, Darren. How about that? Kyle Kelly has a tweet that's going bonkers right now on Twitter. So set the scene. I came directly from the Chicago airport. I was not able to go to media interviews. I literally walked in my door at 7:50. We were live on the air at 8. Kyle Kelly was at interviews helping us out. He's a recruiting guy for us mainly, but reporters just finished speaking with Notre Dame linebacker Jack Kaiser. He said starters had first-class plane seats on the way to and from Ireland. Marcus Freeman flew economy on the way back. Kaiser said Sam Hartman gave up his first-class seat to Holden Stays. How cool is that, Darren?
That is really great and showing great leadership. That's fantastic.
And Marcus Freeman too, right? Great leadership.
Yep, absolutely. Great leadership. Hey,
So
as we wrap up, let me just say this. One of the comments was asking if our radio show on Saturday was on YouTube. It is not streamed on YouTube. So it's 9:60 a.m. if you're in South Bend, WSBTradio.com. We have a free WSBT radio app, and I think they do an audio feed on the Twitch app. So there are 4 options to listen to the radio show. And maybe at some point, Tyler, you can just send a link of our stream and put it on Blue and Gold so people have an easy time finding it. Yeah,
I think I might have slipped my mind to do that this past weekend, but going forward, that should definitely be a staple. And I'll just say how easy it is. The WSBT.com player or whatever the website is, the one that you send me, Darren. I have an uncle, shout out Andy, who lives in Temple, Texas, and I'm pretty sure every single week, Wednesdays, and now it's going to be Mondays, he's listening for the 20, 25 minutes, whatever it is, from Temple, Texas, every single week. It's that easy. Laptop, phone, whatever you got, put it on. And that's a great segment. And then our radio show this past Saturday was phenomenal. We got into so much, and it's going to be a weekly staple. So, yeah, you can listen live on WSBT's website. I highly recommend that.
All right. Well, great job. Spend maybe 5 minutes with your pup because he's going to need a little love tonight too.
He's locked up in the room right now. I can't believe. Come home, put him right into the room.
There you go. Well, hey.
What kind of dog dad am I?
Well, hey.
Anything for Notre Dame football.
That's right. Hey, great job over there in Ireland with all the work you did. I know it's not easy being on the road, especially in another country. So fantastic job. Thanks for sharing your adventures. And thanks for doing this tonight. This might be our longest show of the year, and you're doing it with 0 sleep, 1 hour and 27 minutes. So job well done.
Yeah, we're definitely going to try to keep these to around that hour mark. But yeah, straight to bed for me right now. I think it was a great show, though. And catch us next week. Again, this one was on Tuesday because I took a little time to travel home from Europe. But going forward, Mondays at 3 p.m. Get you through the end of your workday. If you can't watch live, you can watch it back at our YouTube channel for sure. And then this will also be on Apple and Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts.
Get some sleep. We will see you on Saturday.
All right, Darren.
For Tyler Horka, the Notre Dame football beat reporter at Blue and Gold Illustrated, I'm WSBT Radio's Darin Pritchett. Thank you so much for joining us. Enjoy the ball game on Saturday, and go Irish.